All right, folks. So this is a bit of a weird one this morning in the sense that we have multiple outlets reporting that Wizards of the Coast has canceled 5 of their video games, but one of the video game studios has been on Twitter saying that's not true. We're still in development. We're actually still hiring. So it's a weird thing where we supposedly have a spokesperson for Wizards of the Coast claiming one thing, but a game studio claiming something different. But it's out on Bloomberg, and I'm reading the Polygon one because I don't have a Bloomberg subscription. So I'm just going to go where there's an open source free version to read. So we're going to cover this morning because it's something that is potentially impacting the current scenario that's unfolding with Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast. So essentially, according to the report, we have a situation where Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast suffered a 40%, as I understand the numbers, loss in sales in 2022, meaning they sold 40% less video game products than they anticipated. And these are things related to Dungeons and Dragons and Magic the Gathering. So it's not just Dungeons and Dragons in this case. Um, but it has apparently caused them to tighten their grip and look for ways that they can generate profits. Because again, Hasbro being the corporate entity that needs to generate profits to see its shareholders get satisfied, and Wizards of the Coast being a company that's owned by them, which has to toe the line in order to make the parent company happy. Now, in any situation where you're seeing losses in one sector, if you have a big enough company, you're going to cut ties to stem those losses and look to make up those profits in other areas. Or you can just shore up and ride it out and try to make the best of things and find other ways to make money. And one could argue that one of the ways that they could make money is by spending more, which is to create better and more tabletop and Magic the Gathering card game products, if that's where their strong selling points are. But instead of doing that, they are looking to do this new 25% revenue thing and D&D Beyond and their VTT program and everything else with Dungeons and Dragons because that's the primary moneymaker. But I digress. Let's go through this report. I'm reading the Polygon version, so I'll have a link down below for people. It says Wizards of the Coast reportedly cancels at least 5 video games. D&D Maker pulls back on its ambitions in gaming, but still has some projects on the go. One of the projects still on the go is obviously Larian Studios' Baldur's Gate 3, which I have proudly supported. I purchased the early access the moment it went for sale several years ago. I think it's been at least 2 years ago now. I feel like October of 2020, maybe. Um, but I've been a supporter of them since then, and the game is just growing in leaps and bounds, and it's not slowing down. So I think Baldur's Gate 3 is completely safe. But apparently, like the open world Faerun project that we were thought we were going to get, that's been canceled. It's unfortunate. So anyway, let's dive into this here. Um, it's apparently, according to the report from Bloomberg, they have canceled at least 5 unannounced video game projects. Now, when they say unannounced, this is where I'm a little. I've heard different things because the Faerun open world project was kind of announced. They never gave a title for it, but it had been talked about. So I don't know if that is considered unannounced if they never actually gave a name for it. Don't know. It says the publisher, which also makes Magic the Gathering and is part of the Hasbro toy conglomerate, has made no secret of its ambition to become a major player in video gaming, establishing and buying development studios. And that's the other thing here is the acquisitions that Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast have made over the last couple of years. We're talking big purchases between, buying D&D Beyond, and funding a movie and all of these things. They've made some pretty significant investments in recent years. The spokesperson in the Bloomberg report says that the company was still committed to using digital games, but that it has made some changes to their long-term portfolio to focus on games which are strategically aligned with developing existing brands and those which show promise in expanding or engaging our audience in new ways. In other words, only those projects that are generating profits are going to be ones that survive the chopping block or are projected to generate profits. Everything else that looks like it's not going to generate a profit has pretty much been axed at this point. It says fewer than 15 people will lose their jobs, but Bloomberg said the cancellations could have an impact on external studios. As an example, While it's not clear exactly what projects have been canceled, the Bloomberg report mentions that external studios Other Side Entertainment and Hidden Path Entertainment, both working on games for Wizards of the Coast, plus two further external projects and one internal game that were early in development, have been canceled. But this is where things get weird because the Hidden Path narrative director Whitney Beltran said in a tweet that the studio's D&D game was still in development. Is this the actual tweet here? Yeah. Um, Switch that over real quick. We're humming along on making Epic D&D video game, and we're hiring. So it's a weird thing because they've made a statement, an official statement that says otherwise. And let's go back to dark mode here. Um, Polygon has requested comment from Wizards of the Coast, Other Side and Hidden Path. I don't think they've heard anything as of the time of me reading this and recording this. Um, Says the cancellations won't have any effect on the internal studios that Wizards of the Coast is building to build its video games. In October of 2022, the company announced that Took Games, the developer of its 2020 release D&D Dark Alliance, was rebranding as Invoke Studios and working on a AAA D&D game. And in the last couple of years, Wizards of the Coast has also announced two game studios in Austin, Texas, led by ex-BioWare talent Skeleton Key and Archetype Entertainment. Says despite the scale of investment in video games, they've made few releases announcement. Dark Alliance, which by the way, I played Dark Alliance. It was not that great. It was okay. I was hoping it was going to be way more lore intensive, and it was basically just a hack and slash game, co-op game that used Dristorden and those legacy characters from Icewind Dale. Um, eh, it was fun, but I was wanting more. Like I want the open world Faerun game. Like even better would be an open world Dragonlance game because they've not done anything with Dragonlance for years, other than finally coming out with something new in the tabletop arena. Of course, we have the new Weiss and Hickman um, book, which that's another thing I want to touch on briefly here, but I should probably make a whole video about that because that ties into the whole scandal that's going on right now with Wizards of the Coast being unwilling to, and just not just unwilling, but wanting to stiff people over for money and, going from the 25% royalties they're trying to get with the new OGL 1.1 to canceling game projects to trying to stiff these. I mean, Weiss and Hickman are, I would argue their careers were built because of Dragonlance. And Hickman and his wife were the ones who created Dragonlance. Now, the issue is that they sold that piecemeal, just gave it away to TSR in exchange for becoming employees and working on building up. But Dragonlance was a tabletop game before the novels were written, before Weiss came in and started working with him. And then it became a big thing and spawned video games and everything else. But Dragonlance, that's a big deal, but they've not really done any video games with it for a long time. They've put all their money in that Forgotten Realms basket, and it would have been really cool to see more Dragonlance projects come out because I would argue that Dragonlance is. I like the Dragonlance world more than I like the Forgotten Realms world, but that's just me. I realize it's a personal thing. Um, Not everyone agrees with me on that. That's okay. The point is, it would have been cool to see some Dragonlance video games in the modern area. Anyway, they've also got Magic the Gathering Online, Magic the Gathering Arena, and of course Baldur's Gate 3 coming up soon, which is great. Says they've updated to say that both Magic the Gathering Online and Arena are currently active, and on January 6th, it says the status of Hidden Paths Dungeons and Dragons game remains unclear. What's the date today? The 9th. So this was 3 days ago was the last update to this article. The status of the Hidden Path Dungeons & Dragons game remains unclear. On Thursday, the developer tweeted from its official account that our Epic D&D project with Wizards is still happening. However, Bloomberg reporter Jason Schreier responded, insisting that his reporting was accurate and that a Wizards of the Coast spokesperson had confirmed that the project was canceled both before and after the statement from Hidden Path. So something weird's going on here, which is why this particular video, take it with a grain of salt because we haven't actually heard any official public announcements from Wizards of the Coast regarding the cancellation of their projects. We've only got this Bloomberg report and some tweets that have been going out. But again, reportedly they've canceled at least 5 video games, and it's apparently tied to the poor performance of their video game projects in that sector in the 2022 year, while also making these big purchases. It remains to be seen, though. Again, anything that this has to do with, I think, would just be them trying to figure out what, and this wouldn't be anything different than other companies do. Again, if you're suffering losses in a division, then you're going to need to cut that division off and figure out a way to shore up and keep the company profitable, keep everybody employed. So, if tabletop is where you're making the most of your money, then double down on tabletop. I don't think that's the way they're doing it is the best way, but that's apparently what they're doing. Anyway, but I want to do another video about the Weiss and Hickman thing because I had honestly kind of forgotten about that until we were doing this morning's premiere at 6 a.m. and we were talking about it in the comments, and that popped up. And I was like, you know what? I forgot all about that. That was something we need to talk about as well because, Wizards of the Coast has a long history, along with TSR, of doing some pretty shady things when it comes to litigation, and this isn't their first misstep. So interesting to see how this plays out. Interesting to see if this is actually legitimate. You know, if you got more information, I'd love to hear it. Drop it down in the comments below. If you like what you heard here today, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell icon so that you can get more. Drop a super thanks. Join as a member to support. Hit the Patreon page up. Don't forget our Discord. I'll see everybody in the next episode. Peace.